I mean, even on a dollar bill, right? Anyone listening, get a dollar bill from your pocket. Look at the little text on there that says, this note is legal tender for any public and private debt. Like, there's literally a disclaimer on your money that says this has no value. If you want people to adopt Bitcoin as a medium of exchange, you need to explain to them why it is a superior store of value. The US dollar is created by the Federal Reserve, which is not federal and doesn't have any reserves. Instead of pitching the solution of Bitcoin, I think it's way more important that we talk about the problem that it solves.
Hi, everyone. This is Jack Allwild with another money episode. Today, we have very special guest, Bitcoin Bram. Bram, welcome to the show.
Hey, man. Thanks so much for inviting me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. So before we get into your discovery of Bitcoin and going down the rabbit hole, I do like to start off the conversation by asking, what was your relationship like with money growing up?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I actually, after I really dove into the Bitcoin rabbit hole, I realized I always saw money as time, which actually really helped me, to get Bitcoin eventually. But yeah, I've always been kind of like, I call myself like a creative entrepreneur. I love to explore the ideas that I have, and I don't think I've ever had a real job like for more than 18 months or something, like always doing my own thing. And because I was always so curious and trying out new stuff, I kind of always saw money as something you accumulate by doing what you do, to then also create time and space to figure out what's next, basically. So I've kind of always treated it like that. I have to say that I think my usage of money was pretty static before, like not really investing or doing anything like that, because I don't know, I'm quite a risk averse person in that sense. So although I'm trying out my new ideas, I always thought, well, if I put money in stocks and the stock grows like, I don't know, 10% this year, I think I can make more money by investing this money in myself and making more than 10% return on, whatever I would have invested in a stock. So I always kind of held back on doing that. And I think when I discovered Bitcoin and dove into that and realized that, with the debasement of fiat money, my time is basically stolen from me. That is kind of when I realized, okay, I need to move this, basically this abstraction of my time and energy, or what I could also spend in the future on whatever idea I have. I should move that into a system that I understand, and B, doesn't get debased like fiat money. So I think that's kind of where a bridge to Bitcoin comes into play.
How would you describe your parents' relationship with money, and like how they did they, was it a talking point around the dinner table, or it was something kind of hush hush?
Nothing really talked about, to be honest. I don't think we were rich, also not poor. Like we traveled a lot. I saw a lot of different places, but yeah, just a normal middle class, I'd say, upbringing. No real education or something like that on money or investing or finances. So when I was like 12 or 13, I got this like children's account with the bank that my mom was at, and that is kind of where my allowance went. And when I had like my first jobs, like doing a paper route, or eventually I worked quite some years in like a clothing store. That's kind of where I just had my salary sent, and that's basically it. So to be honest, I never really thought about what money is, or how it works, or how to even prepare for the future, or stuff like that. It was actually when I was 30 and I worked at a bank, I was already a little bit into Bitcoin. I also had a mortgage, that a colleague told me, did you know that the money in the bank is not yours? And then I was like, oh, like, what do you mean? How does that work? And then we had lunch for like an hour, and he explained to me like fractional reserve banking, and that you basically, when you deposit money in the bank, you lend it out to the bank, they borrow it from you, and they use that capital to fuel their business model and make money for themselves. And I remember walking away from that conversation just feeling like an idiot, just thinking about like, hey, I'm participating in this system that I don't really understand, and I feel like I'm more a subject than an actor in here. And that moment was quite a big accelerator for my further journey into studying Bitcoin and finance and economics. So I'd say that from that moment on, I actually started studying finance and economics and
Okay.
trying to figure out how that works. Yeah.
So what year was that when you actually had that discussion at the bank, and then how long until you got into Bitcoin, or had you already been kind of in Bitcoin at
Yeah,
that
I was
time?
already into Bitcoin. So I discovered
Okay.
Bitcoin in 2013. I always share like I bought between 100 and then 400, and I sold everything at 4,000, and I felt really great about that.
Uh-huh.
And then like on and off, just interested in it, but I was just in general, I've been interested in technology. So my background is in like startups, digital product development, VC investing. It's funny because I never really thought about like, where does that money come from, or how does that game
Uh-huh.
work? But so I also discovered Ethereum at like $17 or something, Litecoin, all these things.
Uh-huh.
I explored that. So I got a bit distracted, but I think that turning point, having that conversation, so that's 2017. That was a big turning point to start slowly focusing on Bitcoin more. And I think since like 2021, I've been 100% only into Bitcoin, no altcoins, crypto whatsoever.
Mm-hmm. And were there any like books that you had read that really like moved the needle for you, or certain people you were listening to along the way early on, like
Yeah, a
2017?
lot of podcasts actually. The Bitcoin Standard. I have the Dutch version of The Price of Tomorrow here by Jeff Booth, which I think is a fascinating book. That is probably the number one book, like understanding how technological advancements should lead to the democratization of the technology that's being developed, not only in price, but also in adoption for a broader group of people. And therefore, advancing technology should make prices go down. But yeah, if you look back, or if you think about like, 60 years ago, a bread was like 25 cents in whatever currency, like guilders or dollars in your case. But now it's like 4 or 5 of these money units. Would you agree that we became better at making bread in the past 60 years, right? And most people would agree, because the technology progresses. But why do you need more money units to pay for a bread that is, by the way, probably also nutritionally worse than the bread of 60 years ago, right? Like, does that make sense to you? And when I started to think about that, combined with, I remember a podcast that I listened to with Nate Hagens, was a guest on the Aubrey Marcus podcast, which is more like a spiritual self-development podcast, totally not related to Bitcoin, but they talked about energy. And at one point, Nate says something along the lines of, if you look around you, everything you see costs energy to create or maintain. And when I connected that with basically my personal productivity, my finite time in life, and the finite energy I can expend in my life, and then realizing that I'm rewarded for expending that finite energy in time with a money that can be created infinitely, I realized that that was a very dumb trade, probably the dumbest thing that most people are doing in their lives. And yeah, kind of following that, I would say, philosophical route, trying to understand, and visualize these concepts scarcity and how people are trying to be productive, what the effects of that are, and realizing that although technology should bring prices down, they aren't going down, but that's because those deflationary forces are fighting inflationary forces of the money that we price these advancements in. And so what Jeff Booth argues in his book is that we cannot really get to this age of abundance, basically, where these technological advancements are only accelerating, as we're also currently seeing with AI, right? That's only going faster and faster. Like every idea, concept can be copied in minutes, basically, and people can get access to more and more tools to be more productive and improve their lives, etc. But if we keep pricing those deflationary gains basically in an inflationary money, we'll never really see what that could bring us. So we need a harder money, a scarce money, an absolutely finite money to basically value these technological advancements in. And something I've been thinking about lately is like when you go back to like the 1920s or 30s and you look at these future predictions. I don't know if you've ever looked into that, but like people thinking about the future, like what does the year 2000 or 2020 look like, and people talk about flying cars and this crazy abundance and all this technology, etc. And what I find interesting is that when you think about that, right, like that is where their mind was in the context of the time that they were living in, right? So their projection towards the future was having that. Now we are living in that future and we don't have that. And so I find that a very interesting how do you say, like juxtaposition almost to be in that place and not seeing what they thought the future would be. And well, my conclusion has been that is because of the money that doesn't allow us to progress faster than a certain rate, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my brother and I actually talk a lot about how poor humans are at predicting things. Because on one of our podcasts, we did like these 5-year predictions, and we're gonna review them in like 3 more years. But we're probably very bad at what we said 2 years ago. And then I was one of those economic students in college that studied Keynesian economics, and inflation's totally fine. And yeah, that price of tomorrow was like a game changer for me too. So can you some people, I think one of the criticisms of some of like the maxis is that they say like they're never going to sell their Bitcoin. And I think some people have trouble like envisioning what their life looks like then. Like, so are you one of those people that never sell your Bitcoin? And how do you view it going forward? And I've reviewed like Mark Moss's like Bitcoin calculator, where you're just like borrowing from the Bitcoin each year, every few years. So like, how do you kind of view it?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I can look up some tweets that I have around this. But like, of course, there's a discussion around store of value versus medium of exchange, and how should people view Bitcoin. And I think when people read the white paper, literally, the first sentence is a P2P decentralized cash system, right? Or digital P2P decentralized cash system. And although Bitcoin is the ultimate engineered money, or as John Nash would say, ideal money, in practice, it doesn't, get adopted like that. So although Bitcoin has the characteristics of the ultimate money being, a medium of exchange, being able to transact, right? Like I can send you a Bitcoin right now. You can ship me that microphone or your chair, or, whatever. We can already exchange value using Bitcoin as a reward in that value exchange. Like we can do that today, just technically we can do that. We can agree to that, and whatever value exchange we agree upon. It's a store of value. It's the best store of value, a superior savings technology, because it will never be debased, right? There's a fixed amount, a verifiably fixed amount of the amount of Bitcoin that will ever exist, and we have this known issuance schedule. And then the third characteristic of money is using it as a unit of account, basically using it as a way to value slash price, any products or services in the world, what we basically just talked about, right? Which is, of course, not being done right now. But I think what people find hard to realize, and it also took me some time to figure that out, is that just because a thing is the thing, it doesn't mean that people adopt it in that way, right? So if I tell people now, instead of using your euros or your dollars or your yen or pounds, you should use Bitcoin as a medium of exchange, they wouldn't even understand why they would do that, right? Because that reasoning, behind that reasoning, there's a lot of arguments to explain why it is better. But for me, the medium of exchange part of the money part of Bitcoin is not the most prevalent use case, right? So that takes time before people figure that out. And I think they figured it out by I will look up a tweet, but I think the most prevalent and primal use case today is, how do you combat the debasement of the money that you're being forced to use by your government, basically, right? So yesterday I actually tweeted, if you want people to adopt Bitcoin as a medium of exchange, you need to explain to them why it is a superior store of value compared to anything that you can use as a store of value in the world. Because once people want more of it to store their value, they will start asking for it in value exchanges, explaining to the people that they're exchanging value with why they want it as a reward in the value exchange, right? And in that way, it grows to more people. So instead of pitching the solution of Bitcoin, I think it's way more important that we talk about the problems that it solves. And the funny thing is, I mean, like you said, you learned about Keynesian economics. I don't know your the level of your degree, but I've talked to masters of economics that told me I've never really learned what money actually is during my study, right? Like, I was calculating units, but the philosophical conversation or discussion around what money is never really took place. And I think the interesting thing there is that is the entire point, right? If you're never really being taught what money is, you will also never doubt it and just think like, okay, this is the thing that we converged upon, and we all agreed that this is money. I think that's a general argument that I hear a lot, right? Yeah, but we agreed to use this thing, which is not the case, right? So the US dollar is created by the Federal Reserve, which is not federal and doesn't have any reserves, which was created by a small club of commercial banking owners, and they basically supply the US government with the amount of money, right? And they set the value of the money. So from the get-go, with the foundational flaw in this money system that is no different than any other place in the world, is that there's a small group of people that determine the value of something that should be a neutral good, so we could exchange value in the freest way possible, basically, right? So if you have a value proposition and you say, I can do this thing for you and it costs 1,000 money units, and I say, okay, I want to buy it from you for 800 money units, and you say, no, well, 900 is okay, and I say, okay, and then we shake hands. We did that in total freedom, right? And then you start delivering whatever you are, whatever the value is that you're delivering, and then I'm going to pay you these 900 units. But there's a third party that influences the value of these 900 units. So there is no actual freedom in the trade that we make. So there can also not really be true capitalism in that sense, because there's a constant influence over the value of this money. And once you have spent your finite time and energy creating the value that you deliver to me, that is gone forever. And the reward that you got should actually represent in a pure way that abstracted time and energy that we agreed, or you agreed to, that your time and energy is worth these 900 units, right? But if more and more of these units are constantly created, that's the whole purpose of a debt-based and fractional reserve banking money system, then that abstracted time and energy that I gave to you in the form of money is constantly debased, and thus your time and energy is stolen from you, and thus you are incentivized not to build and deliver real value or long-term value. You are incentivized to be a consumer. And I think that is what everyone can see in society today, right? Like, people are consumers, they are not creating. And that's, I think, the link to time and space that was my answer to your first question. They're not creating, they are not even able to create the time and space to think about what they are here to do in this life. What is the big thing that I can do or try or take risk for? Because they cannot create enough time and space to actually do that, right? And when we look back in history, there have been people that have worked on buildings and crazy art, or, well, let's say buildings, right, that are still here 500 years later. And these people worked on something that they never even saw finished within their lifetime, if that makes sense, right? Or and so I think a lot of people think we are so advanced right now, and I mean, we are talking to each other from the other side of the world. I mean, yes, that is advanced, but with regards to our minds, just use the 500-year building example. A few months ago, I was in Antwerp in Belgium, and I was standing in front of their the stock exchange, very old exchange, and on the surface, on the front, it says 1582 or something. And I was just thinking, what has been built in the last 50 years that will stand here for 500 years to come, right? I don't know, maybe there's a few things in the world, but back in those days, 500 years ago, people were spending their time and energy on creating something that would last multiple generations after them, right? And I think if people are listening to this, whether you're into Bitcoin or not, it doesn't really matter. You cannot ignore that is not the case anymore, right? And for me, that's been a very kind of interesting path to follow, to understand, okay, what does the degradation and the debasement of money over time do to our motivation and psychology and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think Safe had a section in the Fiat standard, like a section on Fiat architecture, and he talked about exactly what you were touching on there with the architecture lasting so much longer back in the day. And it also made me think of, I know in the Japanese culture, they try to make their buildings basically not last, or it's the culture to recreate on prior generations. So they'll smash down a house.
Dude, there are houses that you can take apart and reassemble in other places, right? With this crazy Japanese woodwork. But yeah, I mean, we could ask people, why is everything so ugly right now?
Yeah.
Right? If you go to an old timer car museum, these cars are fucking sick. They are pieces of art, right? The forms, the fabric, the space, right? And now everything is just bland. It's gray or white or black, and all these cars look alike, and all these brands have SUV coupe type fucking models. It is not original, So I love the phrase, everything is downstream from the money, right? If the base interaction of people in a society is basically exchanging value, if we don't barter anymore, which is also a form of exchanging value, right? But when we are expanding our the area in which we trade in, also to find other people that can do certain things that we can not do, right? That is kind of where the money originated, as a basically a tool, technology to not barter anymore and trade over longer distances. And so if money as a tool cannot fulfill that function anymore, everything is eventually downstream from the money. If my incentives become corrupted or perverse, and I cannot agree to an equal value exchange or a value exchange in collaboration with you, and maybe your incentives are also perverse, and you are oh, I need to give Bram this money because I know it's the most valuable today, and tomorrow it's already less valuable. we are not exchanging value in a conscious way. And when we're not doing that, that's when you see that people are lazy, and we follow the best incentives that are proposed to us or shown to us, right? And so that's where you kind of see the degradation, I would say, eventually accelerating. But I think many people should understand that everything is downstream from the money. The quality of the money um, assures the quality of your incentives, and that will eventually lead to the outcomes that you're seeing today, basically.
Mm-hmm. So just to like stroll back to like whether you're like how you're using the Bitcoin, are you ever, because you said like you've avoided investing in like
so
stocks or
sorry,
something
we were talking
because you see a higher return investing in yourself. So are there times where you will sell some Bitcoin to maybe invest in?
So this was the question, right? So but I think this was needed. So to make the loop back to will you ever sell or not, I think the current stage of Bitcoin, even after 16 years, right? Like people think that 16 years is very long, but in the emergence of a new money, it's definitely not long. We are in a monetization phase of Bitcoin, right? People are trying to figure out what is this thing? Why should it exist? I think we touched upon some reasons as to why it exists and why people need it. But the indoctrination or the bamboozlement, right? The fairy tale fiat money, that narrative is very strong, as we talked about. Like, we never learned what money is. You, as an economics major, never really learned what money is, right? How can a general pleb understand what money is when they were younger, they went to a store, they got some coins or bills from one of their parents, and they went and got a lollipop or an ice cream and gave this coin thingy or paper thingy and got the ice cream, and then they were like, okay, well, apparently this is money, right? And I don't really ever question that. So like, the non-belief or non-understanding of money is deeply ingrained within everyone, especially in Western society, I would say, where the money always worked to a degree, right? When you talk to people from Lebanon or Venezuela or Argentina, they all know that the money can be inflated away within a day, right? Yesterday, I learned from someone who grew up in South America that there was a time in Argentina that when you went out for dinner, you had to pay when you sat down. So not afterwards, when you sat down, because the restaurant owner was afraid that, after 2-3 hours, people in Argentina dine for a long time, the money would be worth less. So they wanted all the money up front. Anyway, that really blew my mind, that apparently in places in the world that have no different money systems than ours, this stuff is already happening, right? So people need to understand that not understanding money is deeply ingrained within them. I had the same. It took me a very long time to get out of that. But once I understood that we are in a phase where, like I said, this use case of protecting yourself against debasement of the money that you're forced to use is the primary use case. And I think that will be that for quite some time, let's say, the next 10, 20 years. And only after that, when enough people understand that this is the money that they should use and have to store the abstraction of their time and energy, that's when they're going to start asking for Bitcoin as a reward in the value exchanges that they participate in. Could be sooner, but general adoption, I think, takes a long time because people have to find the right incentive to start asking for Bitcoin. That's basically it. So although Bitcoin already has all these characteristics, you can use it as a medium of exchange, as a currency. The fact that it already is doesn't really matter if people don't really understand why they would use it. And I think that's an interesting discussion in general, where people who are very how do you say, like Puritans about it, like, no, people should adopt it as money, but you cannot force the adoption of a money. That just goes slowly as more people are waking up to their financial reality and hopefully realize that they have to move to a better money. And I think to go back to the question again, like, will I ever sell? No, I'm not selling yeah, I don't know, for the next 10, 20 years, I don't see Bitcoin as an investment. I see Bitcoin as a superior savings tool, as a better money. So I basically moved the wealth that I accumulated into a system that I could actually verify for myself and truly own. So yeah, that's kind of how I view it. Like, yeah, you have to have a longer time frame than what you're used to with probably anything else in your life. And I think that's also why hodling Bitcoin is hard. And a lot of people get distracted along the way, because you can see this, but you still have to be patient for it to actually play out over time.
And then I was kind of curious on your thoughts, like the people that do say they're going to just borrow against it, don't sell it, but just borrow against it. And then like I'm kind of trying to think, like, if you're borrowing fiat, aren't you kind of
You're keeping it
enhancing
alive.
the
Yes.
fiat system?
Yes. I think that's a very interesting question. And I agree that, yes, you keep the fiat system alive for longer. I don't necessarily know what the implications of that are, because I do believe on the flip side that, fiat is eventually doomed to fail. Like, it is not a sustainable system. It's a sustainable system for 20, 30 years, probably from like 1971 to like 2000, 2008-ish, right? Where you really see things starting to blow up. So there has been a lot of prosperity that's been brought to the US, for example, in these 1970 to 2000, for example. So it works to a degree, but eventually, yeah, a money system based on the promise of paying back the debt of another person is not really a good foundation for a money system. So you also see with the national debt in the US that's accelerating. You maybe you talked about that before, but the whole debt spiral, right? They're creating new money to pay off the old money, and there are still people stupid enough to lend money to the US government. Basically to get paid back on a nominal basis, but in real terms, the debasement of that money is only accelerating. So as long as people don't wake up to that, it will definitely continue. And I agree that when you borrow against your Bitcoin, you kind of keep the fiat system alive to a certain degree, but I don't think that the impact of Bitcoiners borrowing with fiat will be that sufficient. I think the real problem is more in like the sovereign bonds and treasuries and stuff like that, where there has to be a point where, yeah, enough buyers figure out that, yeah, there's no value in getting a 10-year US treasury, right? Like, okay, the debt of the US grew by $1 trillion in 6 months. What's that going to be in 10 years, right? And why would the possibility of them paying it back grow over the 10 years? So I find it very interesting, actually, that just a pleb like me without any financial or economic background has figured this out. But the people that actually should understand, they are buying the treasuries, they are the pension funds of the world, are still buying it, right? And when I say this on Twitter, there will be, or now people listening, they will say, yeah, but they're obligated to by their government. Yeah, that's the whole point. That is showing you that it's a rigged thing, that it's well, basically it's a Ponzi. We could go into that, but like it's a rigged game. They are using your money, what you earned by expending your finite time and energy to fuel a system that is not designed to be working in your individual interest. And yeah, once you accept that that is the case, that's, I think, when you can open your eyes to Bitcoin. Like, you have to take a little red pill in order to get to the orange pill. You have to realize that this system is not designed to enhance your individual prosperity. That is basically it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just share. Yeah, so I work for insurance companies, and there's a thing called like RBC, risk-based capital, where if you hold certain types of assets, the insurance company is supposed to hold a little bit extra in reserves for those assets. And with treasuries, they don't have to hold anything. So they're also incentivized. Just to your point, there's a lot of incentives that are kind of, yeah, incentivizing companies, insurance companies, banks to hold certain assets. So yeah.
It's crazy. And these people also never really think, what am I actually doing? What am I actually trading? What is the actual forecast or the probability that the debt I'm taking on is being paid back? Like yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I sometimes I feel like it's also a burden when you understand how this works, because you just really want other people to see it. I mean, even on a dollar bill, right? Anyone listening, get a dollar bill from your pocket. Look at the little text on there that says, this note is legal tender for any public and private debt. Like, there's literally a disclaimer on your money that says this has no value. This is an abstraction of a promise, or even another abstraction in between. So there is no difference between the bill with the 1 or the 5 or the 10 or the 50 on it. That is just your perception or what you've been told. But legally, by definition, there is no value of this paper that you're holding. It literally tells you, like, it is on there, right? And just that, I think, also ties back to what we talked about. Why does this take a long time for people to figure out? Because it's right in their face and they're not even seeing it, right? So that is how deep the programming that we've all had sits, basically. And it takes a long time. It takes people dying, and it takes new generations to grow up in a world where Bitcoin just exists, for example, right? The children that are, and everyone 15 and under will grow up in a financial world where Bitcoin exists, where there's this parallel system that acts as a mirror to this other system, to the fiat money system, right? And just by existing and having different properties and different values and principles emanating from those properties that are asserted and verified in a decentralized global way, I think makes the narrative for Bitcoin slowly stronger and stronger, because it's going to be easier to explain, okay, you have this thing that you're forced to use and you don't really even know why, and it's losing value provably, we can show you the numbers. And then you have this other thing that no one really controls, that is a global, decentralized, absolutely finite money, right? And so that's, I think, what we need in Bitcoin is time, and you need patience in order for that to be played out, right? And then I think you can have different types of conversations, because people that are still deep in the Keynesian ideology or philosophy will be like, well, but a finite money is not good for growth and blah, blah. Well, then you can get to those types of conversations, I think.
I guess one other thing. So like some people might like the idea of Bitcoin and they might start putting their energy towards it. But in terms of like going all in, like being like, what they call like a Bitcoin maximalist, like all your wealth is going into Bitcoin. I heard Lynette Zhang on the What is Money show recently, and she's a gold bug. And she was kind of saying, well, it takes some trust that you actually like trust the code, or you can verify it yourself. So like, and I'm not like an engineer really by trade. So like to make like the next step to really be a maxi, like I feel like I would really need to show myself that there are in fact only 21 million, like to try to prove it to yourself. So like how could you maybe, I guess, to the listeners and to me, like to take that like next step to like really like all in?
Well, I think first you should conclude if you agree with the fact that an infinite money supply is not a good thing, that an infinite money supply doesn't give us the technological, deflationary, abundant future that you can logically argue towards. So that is step one. If you say, yes, we can continue, right? If you don't see a problem, it is kind of futile to continue the discussion, right? So I think there's certain steps. So if you agree that this is a flawed money that doesn't give us what technological advancement could give us, then we can continue to step 2, right? Okay, so if there is a neutral, decentralized, global, verifiable, instant settlement money, would that do you know Entourage, the show? Would that be of
Yeah.
interest to you? Would it be an
Yeah.
idea? Like, what does the old guy say? Anyway, right, so if you think, okay, why this scarcity versus this infinite money, right? So I really like this. There's this image. I'm trying to paint a picture, which is like a little orange pyramid, which is Bitcoin, that doesn't grow in size. And on top of that, there's like an inverted pyramid, which is basically, all the productivity in the world, or all products and services in the world, basically anything that the collective of people and later also AI can create in value, right? And we talked about how if we price all goods and services that eventually should be democratized and more accessible to people in this inflationary money, then we are not getting the benefits of it. But if we value them in something that is finite, where each of the units in this finite system eventually represent more goods and services, so over time you can buy more with each unit or subunit of a Bitcoin. And that happens because Bitcoin is the most stable way, or kind of like I'm thinking about how I say that, like it's an economic constant. Like one Bitcoin is one Bitcoin. The whole purpose of, I'm taking a little sidestep, the whole purpose of this this Bitcoin network, the underlying trustworthiness comes from the integrity of the data that is stored on the ledger of the Bitcoin blockchain, or the time chain, as some people say, right? So the data, the whole history of this monetary system is auditable by you individually with a node, for example. And the whole goal of this network is to keep this truth, the truth of this money, to uphold this integrity. That's why the idea is that every 10 minutes, currently over 20,000 nodes, different computers, miners, they check this ledger and they say, okay, good, good, good. This is the shared truth. And that is how we continue, right? That is how literally the blocks are attached to each other. So when you look at the Bitcoin blockchain and I look at the Bitcoin blockchain, you and I see the same. We are equal participants in this money system. The Federal Reserve has never been audited in its lifetime, right? So the game for me and for you and for Jerome Powell and for Jamie Dimon is all different, if that makes sense. So there are no one is equal in the fiat money system. Everyone is equal in the Bitcoin money system, because we all use Bitcoin as money based on a shared truth that we all accept should be the truth and should stay the truth towards the future. So the longer Bitcoin exists, the longer it upholds its integrity of keeping the truth in this system, the more predictable it becomes, the more trustworthy it becomes, and the more you should be incentivized to adopt it. Because again, if this super truth ledger is compared to this vague, abstracted, obscured ledger of fiat money. I don't know if you heard Elon Musk in his Doge days talk about, apparently there are 6 computers at the treasury that can create the money. Did you see that? Like there are like different people that can just press the buttons and then like the numbers change, right? So I think that's a good practical example to show you that whoever is behind the computer with whatever credentials given by whoever, it doesn't really matter, can arbitrarily change the amount of money in this fiat money system. Just that compared to an absolute shared truth, of which the integrity only grows over time as more people adopt it, as more people run a node, that actually invites you, I would say, when you adopt Bitcoin, to also contribute to it, right? It is in your own self-interest that you become someone, a node in the network that helps to verify and increase the integrity of this network. I don't know if this is fully an answer to your question,
Okay.
but this
Yeah.
this takes time, right? And so when you realize that there is this obscure thing that you will never understand, that is not designed to work for you, and there is a money system that is inherently trustless. I don't have to trust you, you don't have to trust me. We trust this. I'm thinking about how to say this. Like, you can you can trust that everyone follows the rules because you are also following the rules, if that makes sense. You can only gain value from this system of rules. It's a computer protocol when you actually follow the rules. You can try to game it, but then it doesn't work. So in that sense, the Bitcoin network, money network box is pretty ring fenced. It's like you follow the rules or not. And that is the only question you have to answer for yourself. Do I follow the rules of this monetary protocol, which are, 21 million absolute finite supply every 10 minutes, this issuance schedule, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And how you can verify that? Well, yeah, maybe if you're technical, you can dive really deep into that, or you can try to think about it a bit more philosophically, like, okay, if what I just said conceptually doesn't work, why does Bitcoin still exist after 16 years, right? And I always kind of describe it like this. When you think about how many ideas are shared on the internet every day, millions, billions of ideas are shared every day about any type of subject, right? Why is it that a random idea on a random, very niche internet forum is still alive after 16 years and has been able to accumulate and now protect over $2 trillion worth of wealth, right, in this little orange pyramid? Do you think the trajectory will be that at some point everyone will be like, yeah, whatever, fuck it, I'm just going to get out of this? Or over time, adoption grows and more value from this inverted green pyramid basically goes into this little pyramid that cannot grow in size, which eventually makes it so that each little unit or subunit of Bitcoin eventually buys you more goods and services over time. So to make a last comparison, in a debt-based fiat money system, by borrowing money, you are basically borrowing, abstracted time and energy, productivity from the future to now, so I can spend it now with a promise that I pay it back in 20, 30 years, if you think about a mortgage, for example. People have to reflect on how solid do I think that is, right? How trustworthy do I think that is? Or do I save abstracted time and energy I have right now, rewards for productivity that I expended today or this month, and I got my salary, and I store it in this absolutely finite system where over time more value is stored. So I'm actually sending my time and energy slowly towards the future so I can spend it in the future on whatever I want. And that ties back to the beginning when we talked about, if you use Bitcoin, you can actually create this time and space towards the future to build something, to take risk, to try something, and actually have also the time and space to fail, right? Because if I try something today, well, I'm doing a podcast for almost 2 years now, right? I'm trying that. If I fail, the fact that I saved in Bitcoin mitigates that failure, if that makes sense. So it doesn't matter if I fail. I am protected in a financial way because I saved in Bitcoin. If I saved everything in fiat money over these 2 years and I fail after 2 years, then the amount of fiat money I have now buys me less after these 2 years. So I have like a double problem, if that makes sense. So that's a long answer. And I really wonder what your thoughts are here.
No, there's, yeah, but I guess maybe it sounds like a good step would be to running a node. Maybe that is a good way.
Of course. Well, there's different levels to how much do you need to verify, right? It's an individual case. Like, how much do I need to mitigate the risk of, trusting what other people say, or
Right. Trusting,
how I
yeah.
think it works, or looking at certain data. Like when you run a node, you can actually verify your own transactions, right? That's the whole idea of being your own bank. You can literally store and exchange Bitcoin under your full control, which is not possible with any financial asset in the world. I mean, we didn't even touch upon that, right? But like, I think that ties into the question of would you ever sell it? My response is sell for what? Once you study this enough, you see that every other financial asset is inferior in different characteristics, from how you can own it or transport it or verify it, for example, but also in controlling or verifying if something is actually real, right? Like if I go to a gold store right now and I buy a gold coin, how do I know if the coin is real?
Yeah.
And they will say,
True.
well, it has this stamp, or we did the 3 chemical experiments, or we scratched
Yep.
it on this fucking, like, there is no fake Bitcoin. You know what I mean? Like I connect my node to the Bitcoin network. That's the Bitcoin network. I get a Bitcoin. That's a Bitcoin. And I can verify that for myself. So, what I like thinking about, and maybe hopefully we touched upon it a bit, is think about these things conceptually, right? Like when I talk to people, for example, people that are, sometimes I meet people that are quite wealthy, and I ask them, okay, you sold a company for 50 million. How are you protecting your wealth? Right. And they say, yeah, I'm doing real estate. And I say, okay, why? I always ask why. And the honest people are silent for like 5 minutes, and they're like, yeah, I don't really know. And I said, okay, that's interesting. Like you are an entrepreneur, you took risk, you got rewarded, you have this amount of money, and now you're protecting it in a way you don't know, cannot control, have someone for that manages that portfolio, right? So you're abstracting that responsibility away again. Like how conscious are you in deciding how you store and grow your wealth? And I think also to tie back to what we talked about in the beginning, how can we talk with people about understanding Bitcoin, is you have to peel the onion back as to wherever you are, whatever your understanding of money or finance or economics is, to get to the point where you realize that you don't really understand what you're doing. And that is the starting point to then learn about, okay, what if there's a superior solution to a menu of problems, I would say, like a list of problems that you can use to mitigate these problems. And then you can talk about the different characteristics, use cases, stuff like that. But because we are talking about money that no one ever really got taught what it is a very complex subject that different people approach from different point of views, just based upon where they are with their understanding and or interest and or problem that they experience.
Oh, awesome. Well, Bram, I'm very grateful for you taking the time. I do like to end the episodes by quickly sharing the best and worst personal finance advice you've heard or received.
So like I said, like I don't have a finance or economic background, but I like these quotes by just like legends, right? I think it's Druckenmiller. I think Druckenmiller talks about diversification, or even what's his name? Jesus, most famous Warren Buffett talks about diversification is dumb, right? Like it's dumb. Like if you understand the thing, you go all in on the thing, right? Mitigating the risk of the thing you understand actually tells you don't understand the thing, so you need to study that more, right? And actually like diversification, in my opinion, is another trick in the book of funding certain stocks or companies that don't really deserve to be funded, basically, right? If you want true capitalism, which is not what we have today, it's a hard market, right? I do something and you do the same, and I suck and you're better, then I lose and your whatever cookie store or bakery survives. Like that's the whole point, right? Like I shouldn't be your competitor just because someone passively gives me money because someone else told them that they should diversify when they are investing in the type of companies that we run. So I really like that advice. Like diversification is dumb. Like if you understand the thing, you go all in on the thing. People that saw Amazon and whole e-commerce towards the future, or Tesla, electrification of cars, like those are the people that got the most benefit from that. So I would say, I think that is really, really good advice. Again, it's about making a conscious choice. So if you're diversifying, like how sure are you about any of the things that you are diversifying in? So I think that's a good advice. Bad advice. Yeah, I think this is maybe simple, but it's just like ignoring Bitcoin. My podcast is called Bitcoin for Millennials, and I once talked to a guy who listened to a lot of episodes, and he said like, "Oh, I find the name brilliant," and I said, "Why?" I just wanted to niche down, and he said, "Yeah, because it shouldn't exist. Like, why do millennials need Bitcoin? Because this whole system that they're participating in is designed against them. Like, it shouldn't exist. Bitcoin shouldn't exist, but it exists. And you cannot ignore it anymore, right? You have to start thinking for yourself. The fact that it's still alive after 16 years, there's never been a financial asset that got to a valuation of 2+ trillion and then went away, right? You cannot ignore Bitcoin anymore. And especially when you are a millennial and you realize, or you should realize, that there is no pension for you, there is no social security, like all that stuff is going down on this fiat money standard. You have to start doing something about that, and that is studying Bitcoin. So ignoring Bitcoin, thinking it's a fad or tulip or Ponzi scheme, is just ignorant and actually goes against your self-interest and against the interest of your children or your possible children and your whole legacy. So I would say ignoring Bitcoin is very bad advice.
Awesome. Well, Bram, where can the listeners go learn more about you or get in touch with you?
Yeah, so most active on X at Bramk, Bramk, and people can find my podcast Bitcoin for Millennials on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Fountain. Just look for Bitcoin for Millennials, or on YouTube Bitcoin Bram. Yeah.
Awesome. We'll have links to those. Thanks again.
Awesome, man. Thank you.